Hours. We've got the lovely lead instructor of UHI, Hardik, facilitating, and we've got Ken from Uniswap Foundation, who will be giving a short speech about Unichain, really quick, 3 slides, and then opening the floor for a Q&A. Take it away.
All right, everybody. Um, Today, what a day, right? What a day here in the world. Today we're gonna have fun. We'll talk about Unichain. I've prepared a very quick slide. I was told to present Unichain in under 5 minutes, so the title of my slide is Unichain in less than 5 minutes. And then I'll dive in and let me see. How do I share my screen? I'll dive in and then we'll go into questions. I think it'll be hopefully fun. Give me a second. Sorry, I'm pressing the wrong buttons. So embarrassing. Sorry, getting nervous. All right.
Live demos.
You know what happens when you're up here? You just get scared. Cool. So this is literally it. It's Unichain in under 5 minutes. I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see? Still good? Sick.
Yep.
All right. So this is for HM Academy, Unichain office hours. I'm Ken. Hopefully I spelled November right, but we're gonna go into Unichain. All right, so today I'll do a quick introduction of what it is, and then we'll talk about Flashbox and UVN, why that's important. And then what's next? And then we'll jump into Q&A, as I just said like 6 times. So why did we embark on this journey? Well, when we think about Uniswap users, they're the primary consumers of Ethereum block space. So it's pretty expensive. If you think about how much Uniswap users have paid to Ethereum validators, it's close to $1 billion. And this is up until June, from July to June 2024. So in a year, it's been a lot of funds paid. At the same time, a lot of MEV that exists on across Ethereum stems from Uniswap directly. Uniswap, not the interface itself, but just Uniswap smart contracts. $700 million is a crazy amount of money in 2023, and that's only grown. When we think about how much this actually generates all across chain, what do we think about for like what the $700 million could have been used for instead? Could have been used for redistributing for LPs? Could we have made deeper pools? Could we have subsidized gas fees? All of these things are sort of on the table, right? And we think about how much gas is spent on using Uniswap. Well, V4 is one of those things where we feel really strongly that the singleton contract makes things a lot cheaper. But over time, if we truly think we're scaling this financial market, it'll take more than just, cheaper smart contracts. We need a cheaper execution layer as well. So when we think about the users, we think about what people are doing on Uniswap. We think about what Uniswap v4 means for the future of the protocol and DeFi in general. It's clear, right? Like there needs to be a place that's more affordable, more accessible, something that is just available for people to use. That also can help push forward interchain, sorry, not interchain, cross-chain standards. How do we ensure that tokens are not going to be fragmented? Oops, go next. Okay. So we're sort of in this place where we just have a lot of fragmented liquidity. We have a lot of fragmented utility. There's not really sort of this idea of like a liquidity hub. There are many different liquidity zones right now, but we're thinking about Unichain as this place where liquidity can sit. And when we think about Uniswap, it's not really just a DEX. It's not a place just for swapping. It is, as everyone here I think is pretty excited for, building a full and robust ecosystem around what can be built on these smart contracts. Uniswap's moat here is order flow, right? We want to capture the trading activity that sits on chain. We want to capture the people who are LPing here. We want to be able to do more with it. And so when we think about a place where, going back to what I mentioned before, where MEV is internalized, where gas fees are cheap, and a place where we can actually have cross-chain standards be pushed forward, interrupt becomes much more easy. When we think about lending solutions, we think about yield generation, LSTs, LRTs, RWAs, being able to kind of think about all of the things that people want to do in DeFi, we need to have an appropriate place where it is truly accessible and composable. And when we think about liquidity hub, we think about a place that where liquidity can sit. We want to ensure that, it's not limited by where liquidity sits, but how execution can actually happen. And that's sort of vague, but we'll get into why, right? So when we have a chain that has everything connected to, we also have the ability to create faster finality, right? We have a way to kind of finalize blocks on Unichain that is a little more efficient when we think about MEV, internalizing that. We have priority gas auctions on Unichain, which allows us to kind of with priority gas auctions, we're able to internalize a lot of the arbitrage, a lot of the auctions, and ensure that that is going back to swappers, to LPs. When we also think about decentralization and sort of the whole idea of like where the super chain is going, where other L2s are going, how do we ensure that interop is top of mind for everybody? Well, it starts not just with the chain itself, but abstracting that away, we're thinking about the tokens. How do we ensure that there are cross-chain token standards? How do we ensure that liquidity, as it sits wherever it is, we're not just thinking about, one token standard that rules everyone, but having bridges that it makes it accessible to swap across all chains, right? Within the super chain, I think it's very clear that, there are already efforts pushed forward for Super C20 standards. But when we think about other L2s, how do we ensure that they're still plugging back in here? Well, with Flashbox and with the Unichain Validator Network, we're able to sort of attest to blocks being finalized. We're able to actually look at, as bridges come in, bridge assets over, that there are ways for us to make any of the DeFi actions and activities accessible, right? And I think just stepping back, Unichain is not an app chain. It is a generalized L2, right? It is one where we want everyone to be able to capture the ability to use flash blocks to have faster finality. This means with liquidations, we're able to kind of not have a huge delay. We're able to kind of move faster in the DeFi primitives that we're building on top of it. When we think about the idea of how order flow is being leveraged in whatever way that means, through either DeFi projects or even in non-DeFi use cases, right? Having votes, having it's timely to say prediction markets, but we'll move away from there. Thinking about being able to participate in sort of engage in larger parts of the ecosystem that don't involve DeFi. We need to have a generalizable L2 that has the technical competencies to have interop standards, but still be able to leverage fast finality on one chain. So I think as Unichain gets built out, we want to know how all of this is serving our users, both on the use case side, both on the retail side, but also on the developer side, right? What is it that you want to build here? What are you extending here that can use Flash blocks? And really kind of expanding that forward. I'm trying to do this quickly. I hope that I'm under 5 minutes, but I think I've passed that. So what's next? The last thing to cover is just, when we think about how we're supporting users and how we're supporting new use cases, we think about Atrium Academy as sort of, that's the top of the line. This is where a lot of Solidity developers are coming in and like wanting to lean into the Uniswap ecosystem. We want people to continue to dive in and get deeper into this, right? We want people to become Uniswap protocol organizations. How do you do that? Well, participate in the hackathons that we continue to fund, participate in retro grants, infinite hackathons, and the builder open call. I think for us, the biggest thing is ensuring that there is support options for you. Retro grants are for any teams that have built, whether it's a hook or any sort of DeFi protocol that's deployed on Uniswap. If you have traction, apply for retro grant. Let's capture that zeitgeist. Let's capture that momentum and keep moving forward. Infinite hackathons, anyone who has submitted for a hackathon outside of ones that we've already sponsored, or finish a capstone project again, like thinking about Atrium Academy alum, right? If you've done a capstone project, it's something that you feel really strongly about, you want to keep building on it, apply for Infinite Hackathon. If you are thinking about doing something in Unichain and you have no idea what to do, but you have an idea, message in the builder open call. Let's talk about what we can do, how we can support you. In the future, when we think about how we're going to internalize a lot of the MEV, we want to ensure that we can cover some of the audit subsidies. We have gas subsidies for V4 hooks for routing. Yeah, we want to make sure everyone has a lot of things to do. But yeah, I will stop there. That's the end of my presentation. Q&A, a lot of stuff.
Awesome. So
I feel like that was
um,
like,
you're good. You're good. Don't worry about that. That's awesome. So just to for everybody else here, if you do have questions, you can post in the chat or just feel free to unmute and ask. I'll just break the ice here. I have a couple questions myself for you, Ken, mostly on the technical front, but you briefly mentioned, things like internalizing that MEV, using it to potentially subsidize things. Is that alpha? Is that something that is going to happen? Is that plans for Uni token in the future?
I think there's a lot on the table for what can be done. I guess for internalizing MEV, we know for sure that like for sequencing, it's PGA, right? Like we want priority gas auctions to ensure that we can use that for other things. Whether or not it's like alpha that we're going to use it for gas subsidies, probably not. We definitely want to ensure that users are having a good experience using Unichain. And when I say users, again, it's not just like the average person jumping on an interface wanting to swap tokens. It's everyone using the generalized L2, right? It's also developers. We want to build that specifically into the chain where we can help do more for both sides of the user base.
Mhm. Cool. And kind of related, you talked about this idea of a liquidity hub with other sorts of dApps, that are currently fragmented applications across fragmented chains. Is that a hint for like Uniswap is expanding its scope beyond just building a DEX? I mean, you guys already have a wallet. Are you doing lending markets and prediction markets now too, eventually?
No, I would say that's definitely not alpha. Uniswap Labs is building, they're going to continue building for retail users. On the foundation side, why we see V4 is so powerful is really because, what we're it sort of changes the paradigm of like what we're discussing here for what Uniswap can do, right? Like Uniswap in the past, we're thinking about it as like DEX. For V4, you can build your own AMM on top of the order flow that exists here, right? Whatever hook you build in there, you can literally build a new AMM. You can build prediction markets. You can build rehypothecation hooks through lending protocols. It just makes the entire ecosystem so much more composable. One thing that I've talked about with some researchers is you can even build a proof of a point of sale system, right? You can build in encryption schemes for dispute mechanisms for point of sale, right? So you can actually have an e-commerce system running on a Uniswap hook. I'm not saying that any of these things are going to be taken by any company, but I think the imagination is really sort of like up and wild for anyone who wants to explore. And for V4, it's such a powerful idea that you can build so many new things on top of the order flow that exists. Unichain just sort of expands how much more accessible it becomes.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Again, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to interrupt or post in chat. But I have one more for you right now. In
Yeah.
terms of, there's a great segue into hooks, by the way. So a lot of people for a long time been asking when hooks. Is it reasonable? Is it a reasonable assumption that Unichain mainnet comes with Uniswap v4 deployed on it?
Oh, that's a good question. I would definitely separate out the two things, right? V4 is in final stages with audits, Unichain, separate workflow. It's a TBD. I can't say yes or no. but rest assured, everyone is working hard to ensure that we can ship both. Don't know that we can get them at the same time.
100%. Okay. I was really hoping it was gonna be the case, but I
Yeah,
understand. It's okay.
yeah.
Cool. Anybody else want to go? Or...
Yeah, maybe quick question. So we're building a lending protocol using a V4 hook. I was wondering, any plans for Chainlink to deploy oracles on Unichain? Yeah, maybe do you have any color on that? Or...
Yeah, so this is alpha. So we are working through getting a bunch of oracles deployed. Chainlink, we're trying to figure out the all the final details of how do we get Chainlink deployed. So sit tight. We're definitely working on it. We want to have Chainlink on launch day.
Nice, nice. Any plans for maybe money markets that are gonna deploy on Unichain as well, or?
Yeah, yeah. Man, there's so much alpha. Definitely have lending markets on day one. We want to have I mean, ideally we have everybody, right? Like, you can deploy it pretty seamlessly. But yeah, we have some who are ready to go. Yeah, anyone who also wants to uh wants to sign on, I can share some. So we are all right, here's some alpha. So we're working on our governance proposal for Aave deployment on Unichain. Han is signed up, ready to go on day one, and so is Venus. So we have those three in the pipeline for sure. There are more teams who want to deploy, reach out to us on the Builder Open call. David, who is on our team on this call as well, is our integration specialist, is our DevX lead. He is the go-to guy to help on integrations.
Cool. Yeah, that's some good alpha, I guess. Yeah.
Hey guys, yeah, Pierre, if you want to reach out to me, feel free. So
Yeah, sure. Be cool to chat. Yeah.
Hi, can I go next? Hi, Ken. Great presentation. Great to catch up here again. So my question is more general and related to lendings as well. So I'm curious to know what will be the Unichain primary focus in DeFi derivative space. Will the approach center around kind of incentivizing liquidity provision for lending pools or other type of derivatives that are known? I mean, in the future we will known Unichain for that, like Arbitrum for DeFi in general, or are other focal points such as optimizing collateral efficiency or minimizing risk or MEV or kind of other focus points are seen for Unichain?
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I guess I will I'll do a cop-out answer and just say that we're working on the incentives right now. I would say that there are product focuses that we want to focus on, but we're not ready to share yet. I think in the next couple of weeks we'll have a better idea and we'll be able to share more broadly. But definitely, hold on tight. Incentives, we'll definitely announce something, but we're working through what exactly it looks like.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, good to see you again.
What avenues are surprising? What interesting. What other, like, for people who are building, actually, this is actually, I guess, for people in Atrium, who are working on, a bunch of hooks. Hopefully some of them end up getting deployed on mainnets, including Unichain. Apart from Chainlink and some lending market, is there anything else you can talk about? So we can just mention that, if you're looking to build a certain kind of hook, like these are integrations that would be, ready for mainnet later.
Yeah, I mean, ALMs, LSTLRTs, yeah, I mean, I think restaking is going to be big. yeah, restaking I think is going to be huge, especially when we think about the Unichain validator network. There's not a lot to share there yet, but hoping by end of this year or like early next year, we'll have more to share on the UVN. Focus right now is V4 and Unichain deployment. But yeah, ALMs, really, we want to ensure that like there is I like to think about it as like a game, like a board game, right? Like when you come in, you want to be able to have more things to do. Every time you roll the dice, you should be landing on a spot where you're doing more things. That's what I want Unichain to feel like. When you're here, there's another thing for you to do. It's not just going to be swapping. It is a fully robust end-to-end sort of ecosystem where DeFi protocols can really flourish in capturing the order flow, especially on V4 as well. And thinking about how that interacts with not just the DeFi protocols, whether it's lending, borrowing, or LP management. It's actually thinking about very deeply how that integrates in with V4 hooks. So for example, if we're able to take lending positions and authenticate it or like use it for like if, for example, if we're able to take lending positions, JIT it into active range, we're able to share the LP fees there. Thinking about automated liquidity managers, how do we continue to like update positions in a way that is so much faster, especially using flash blocks that LVR is essentially rendered not present, right? How do we capture the arbitrage in the times that there is arbitrage opportunities? How do we capture that and redistribute? So yeah, a lot of things.
Cool. Okay, there's a question in chat. Are there any bridges available with Unichain other than, I guess, native bridge and currency for fees, ETH or Uni?
Lots of bridges. I wonder if they're already announced. I think they might be. So I think if you go to unichain.org, you'll see there are 2 bridges that are already there. So there's the Super Bridge by Blob Engineering, and there's Bridge or bridge.gg. So all of this is natively there already, but when we start when mainnet comes live, we'll have more to share on having a bunch of other bridges. So definitely all the major bridges that people use will be included for sure.
Makes sense. Cool. I'm going through unichain.org right now. Okay. Nate, you had something?
Yeah, I know that everybody here is interested in being an early builder on Unichain. And I'm curious, Ken, if I know you've already been so gracious with dropping the alpha today, just left and right. I'm curious if there is anything that you're personally looking at that you think would be a great opportunity to work on with Unichain upon launch.
Oh man, that's such a good question. What yeah, honestly, so if we think about like for Unichain, I've sort of alluded to this, or I said it explicitly many times, but like if MEV is internalized, what does that mean, right? What can we do with the internalized MEV? If there's $700 million for free that just sits there, how do we use that to make the DeFi ecosystem more robust? How do we leverage that for hooks? And what does that look like? I think, we tend to think within the current confines of, lending markets look like this, Uniswap is a DEX, restaking tokens look like this. With V4, all of these things kind of come together, right? You can have restaked assets, you can have staked assets that are rebasing tokens, which previously couldn't be swapped on Uniswap, but on V4 now it is. So thinking about like rebasing tokens, staked assets, and also that on lending, borrowing protocols, and how we can sort of update positions extremely quickly and cheaply now. A lot of MEV capture is just sitting there. So there's a huge amount of sort of like idle capital that had just gone to proposers before, now being internalized into Unichain. I would really push everyone to answer the question, like, what would you do if you had $700 million? How do you make your product better with $700 million? And I don't know, get creative with it, right? I think there's so many ways to cut the cake here. And it's not like it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like everyone is going to capture $700 million or no one gets anything. It is going to be distributed, right? Like, how do you want to use it in a way that really captures the imaginations of the users? How do we do it in a way that really and truly makes decentralized finance more accessible to people? Yeah, I'll leave that.
Wow, thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Any more questions?
I just posted one more in chat. Like, is the goal and the best case scenario here that most of the liquidity or most of the order flow that goes through Uniswap today eventually shifts to Unichain, or at least from the non-super chain chains?
I mean, I think our intention is to make sure that Unichain is functionally one of the best places to do your swaps, do your trading, and really kind of live out your DeFi journey. I think with that being said, it doesn't necessarily preclude like a unique instance on Arbitrum where like Stylus is making improvements on V4 in a way that like Unichain can't. I think like instead of thinking about this as sort of like a zero-sum game on like how much liquidity exists in the ecosystem today, let's think about how this actually grows the pie for everyone else, right? How we think about, and this is going very deeper, but like, thinking about like L3s on Unichain is another crazy way to think about like interop liquidity. It's not necessarily a like us versus them. It is more so like what are the users of Unichain going to do here? How do we ensure that they have the best experience? And then when we think about Uniswap v4 across Arbitrum, across Polygon, how do we ensure that those users are getting the best experience that they can have on Arbitrum as well, right? Like Stylus has advantages over a lot of other chains. And so how do we continue to capture that and ensure that V4 there is the most robust ecosystem of V4 hooks for Arbitrum that we can build? So definitely wouldn't say it is like a either or situation. I think it is like, let's move all the ecosystems forward. Let's ensure that V4 has really innovative hooks. And then when we think about how in the future this all ties in together, I think it's really ensuring that there is room for interop, and we're really kind of pushing forward on standards that help everybody. Yeah, I mean, I think throughout the entire presentation, right, I talked about liquidity fragmentation, but fragmentation should only be fragmented to the point where like we're not able to access currently. We want execution to happen on wherever users have it preferred. But we also want to ensure that like as all this grows forward, right, we don't want lending positions on Aave to not be able to tap into hooks on other chains, right? How do we continue to work together to make sure that that does happen? I think we provide sort of this first step of getting to a place where with order flow, we're building highways for liquidity interop.
So I kind of like, you kind of answered part of the next question I was going to ask you, but also when it comes to like cross-chain interop, the vision for how it's going to work across the super chain feels pretty clear, I think. I think outside the super chain, is it going to be is most of that going to happen basically through like Uniswap X eventually, like just through intents and solvers? Because as far as I understand about superchain, and I'm not an expert in that, is that you can actually natively move assets across chains within the superchain eventually. But if you want to go from like Unichain to something in the Arbitrum eco, then in that case, is that using third-party bridges? Is that using intents, Uniswap X style, or are you actually gonna try to like rebalance liquidity over there?
It can be all the above, right? And it's sort of a cop-out answer, but I think for across and intents, I think are helping to push forward a standard for execution in a way that like we haven't had before. When we think about liquidity management, I think there needs to be better tooling for how we're actually upgrading contracts to be I guess to be more, I guess, accessible in how we're managing liquidity. But in terms of like actually capturing order flow, I think solvers, fillers, et cetera, are the future of like routing. With that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be Uniswap X, right? Propeller Heads just released their Tycho. They open source index their Tycho yesterday, or 2 days ago, right? It's huge. There's so much that can be done here. You build a routing algorithm, and you can build opinionated routers on how what hooks you want to route through, what pools you want to route through. It really expands the field of like what execution or cross-chain execution can look like. And I think for users, it just becomes so much more accessible to be able to trade all across. For liquidity management, that's the next step, right? How do we ensure that like for solvers, it doesn't matter where liquidity sits. You're able to solve across all instances. And wherever there is liquidity, we can ensure that you're getting best price execution. So I think more pushing forward on how things are being executed rather than focusing on like how liquidity is like separated, builds better sort of connections, and that's why I called it a highway. It builds better connections across like all chains. It's a really good question. I don't think we have a full answer there yet. It's really like how we're thinking about at least on our end, moving things forward.
I mean, and it's okay if you don't have a answer for this. I don't think anybody really does right now. But and if the goal of cross-chain DeFi eventually is to, try to do best price, best execution possible through solvers and intents eventually, how does that, change the incentives and the behaviors of LPs on the DEX directly? Like there's like, V2, V3 style, like purely democratic liquidity provisioning versus intents and solvers where it's significantly more concentrated with like maybe 2, 3, 5 market makers. Like that's what like confuses me about cross-chain DeFi right now. And I don't know if there's a good answer to that in how that will actually work. Again, I see the super chain vision clearly. It's just the direction that Optimism and OP Stack is going, but just outside of that, it's
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I mean, I think like if you think about this from like a mathematical standpoint, it really is about like what is the best price execution you can get. So no matter where the solver is pulling liquidity from, it should be able to route the best trade. Yeah, I guess I don't know that answers your question directly, but it is, I guess, if you think about it from sort of like everyone has to abide by the same standard, which I think like there is definitely like there's definitely good reason for everyone to follow a standard, right? But I think to the point where we are today, where we aren't yet at a place where we can accept like one standard for everyone. We're focusing on how we have optimal routing, and that being offloaded to solvers, fillers, different market makers. I think it's really up to us to ensure that trading venues on chain allow us to get the best price execution. And so when we think about like MEV internalization, we think about sort of the ability for the chain execution to be cheap. It really makes it a lot easier to compete with on-chain liquidity than it does, or at least it allows us to compete more competitively. Same word, be more competitive with private market makers. So yeah, I think this is where we sort of level out the playing field when we're able to create ecosystems like Unichain to combat against. Yeah,
that makes sense. I think that's a good answer. I think that gives a good direction / like what does success look like for Unichain as well, which is nice.
Yeah,
Appreciate that. Thank you for that. I know that was like a tricky question. But thank you for that.
Of course. These are good questions.
Any
These
other
questions have
questions
been
from anybody?
properly like 400 IQ. Really good answers too. Actually, funny enough, Srinjoy in the chat, he is working on Stylus. So give him a follow on Twitter and
Very
ask
sick.
any questions if you are curious about that. But he also DM'd me and he was like, yo, all my questions get asked before I can even ask them. So really well done.
Yeah, ping me on Telegram if you want to chat about Silas.
Amazing. Yeah. So thank you everybody for coming through. Just as a reminder, the lovely Uniswap Foundation is sponsoring everybody's tuition for Uniswap Hook Incubator, which is running right now, our third cohort. And so I've got a link in the bottom here, apply.atrium.academy. Come through, drop in an application, mention that you came to the event. It is a really competitive applications process. We talk to everybody who comes through and make sure that they are a bona fide builder, but it's been really good vibes here and I can't wait to see a few of you in program. We've already got like, I think quite a few people here already are already in UHI. So yeah, thank you so much, Ken, for all of the great answers.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, I'm always here. Message me on Twitter if you have any more questions. Happy to chat.
Awesome. I'll
Thanks,
drop
Sam.
the Twitter link in the chat, and I'll see you guys all around.
See you guys.
Well,
See
see
you
you
guys.
guys. Take care. Thank you again so much, Ken.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye bye bye.
Bye.